Hey, what's up? So now we can actually start on fetching data when we click on this button with React Query. But to speed things up and not waste our time, I wrote some predefined code or boiler code so we can just remove that out of the way. First thing, I created this constant file which holds the API URL localhost 3001, and in Carco I created this alias for it. And another alias for the context. So for storing the post in a global store, I'll be using the context API, and I created an alias for that, so we can just import it from anywhere. So and let's go to see our context. We have this index that export anything from the post's context, and inside that we have another index that exports two things: the default exported variable as the default context provider. So this will be the provider, obviously, and the post's context itself, which I will use with hooks, so we can access the context from anywhere. And this is the post context. So I'm just importing the user state, the create context, and this will be the create context. This is how I created the context, and this will be my provider. To consume it, I will use hooks. And this provider, I will provide this post and set post these, which will modify this context. And this is basically it. I thought I wouldn't waste our time by creating these in the screen. I will just show it to you. Pretty sure everyone does this. So just so we can actually focus on React Query. So yeah, now in our app.js, from add context, I imported the context provider and wrapped everything around it. That's it. So now what we need to do in our app header, um, inside our UI or app header, we need to fetch the data on a click somehow. And the final change I did is this here. So in my package.json on the Pollux API, I added a port of 3001, so I don't need to type this again and again, and a delay of 3000, which will give us a 3-second delay on each request. Okay, so let's start in the app header, but let me just make sure I'm actually recording. Yeah, I am recording. Okay. So this is our app. So let's start by actually importing um, from the React query. Let's import from the React query. Let's import the useQuery hook, and let's just use it here. So result or const result will be equal to useQuery, and the first thing will be a key for this query, which should be unique, and this could be an array. We will come to the keys queries at some point, but let me just start off this series by implementing this basic example. So the key should be unique. This key will be fetch posts like this. Fetch posts. And the second argument should be a function that returns a promise. So this, or the user query behind the scene, would resolve this and give us the value. So I'll be using the fetch API, and I will import from add constants, which, remember, we have it points to the constant file, which holds this API URL. So from add constants, import the API URL. So I will use here the backstick, which is the character next to the one keyboard, to the one character in the keyboard, and this allows us to inject strings to inject variables in the string. So by using the $sign in the curly brackets and put this here. Now I will go to the posts. Now I will add some query param, so I want to fetch the whole data. So underscore limit will be equal to 10, and underscore page will be equal to 1. Now this will actually want to return the JSON data. I need to convert that. So then response, I will convert the response to JSON. And this will actually resolve to the JSON data because everything I typed here is equivalent to this. So let me show you. So return, oops. And this will return this promise here, and this promise actually will return, or sorry, the then chain, the last thing in the then chain will actually be returned. So we have this result JSON. and this actually is equivalent to this. So this is what I actually typed. So at the end, this useQuery will resolve the response to JSON. But you can use, like, if you are having one line in your raw function, just remove the body, and this will a line will be returned. Okay, so let's just console log the result and see what will happen. So let's come here and hit refresh. So by default, the status is loading. As you can see, status is loading. We have the remove function. We have is loading true, is idle false, is fetching true, which means we are fetching, is error false. We have all of these stuff that will be very helpful. We have the data by default is undefined. When the response returns, we have the data. These are the 10 posts we have. And we have is error false, is fetched true, which means we got the data, is loading false, and yeah. And if you open the div tool, you will see these information as well here. As you can see, we have the cache time, we have the observer. So each query, or each data returned from each HTTP request using the query will be cached. So each time you actually call the same query using keys, or calling the query itself, the cached value will actually be returned. But behind the scene, React query will actually send an HTTP request, return the data, and compare the previous data and the current data. And if the data have been actually modified, it will return it again. So yeah, it will have caching by default enabled, which is very nice. We will come to it in a moment. But yeah, let's just continue. Yeah, so the idea here that I want to actually click on this button and fetch the data, not just like fetch it on its own. Not sure how this could be useful in real application, because usually you won't have this button that will, each time you click it will refresh something. Maybe you have, but let's just continue. So first thing I will have, or I will pass a configuration for this hook. It's enabled to false. And by the way, if you are wondering why I don't put this code here on click, because hooks will only work if they are on the top level inside a functional component. They won't work if you put them inside a callback or inside a function that is inside the functional component. They will only work here. The same thing goes with the use state hook. So the same behavior here. Okay. So that's why this won't work. So by default will be this one will be enabled. We will have enabled this false. So as you can see, no HTTP request will fire. And this button, each time we click it, we will enable this query. And of course, we will using states. So import from React itself, they use a state hook. So let's come here and enabled, set enabled, and by default it will be false. So let's put enabled here and set enabled. We will actually, like, each time you click on this function, on this button, sorry, set enabled will be true. So let's actually go and test that. So hit fetch. Now it will actually go and fetch it. Remember, it's slow because we have a delay of 3 seconds, because I want in a moment to show appearance and stuff like that. So let's now click again. Nothing will happen. It will only fetch one time, but we need to fix that. The way that we will do this to enable the query and disable it and enable it, disable it, and stuff like that. So the way I will do it, each promise have a finally, like a finally function that you will pass to it any callback function you want, and this finally will be executed on error and on then, and it won't affect the returned value here. So we will always return the array, the JSON response, but when everything finishes, either way we have a success, or either way the promise resolved or rejected, finally callback function will be executed. So finally I will set enable to false. So now refresh. So let's get the posts. We have pending, still pending. Now let's fetch them again. Let's fetch them again. So now on click works, but there is some stuff that you need to remember. Okay. So let's destruct from the results some of the stuff that we actually care about. So is loading. and this bot is loading here. So each button in the Chakra UI accepts is loading, which is something really nice. I think, yeah, I need to comment this out. So by default, is loading will be true. As you can see, the button will be disabled, and we have this spinner. So this is from Chakra UI. So I will pass is loading to it. Okay. So as you can see, when I click, we have is loading true. The response is loading. We got it. Everything is fine. But the weird thing is, if I hit it again, the data will be, or we will fetch the data again, but is loading will actually be true. It will be false. Let me actually display it here. Like this. So is loading false? Let's start from the beginning. By default, it's false. Now it will be loading. Now click it again, it will always be false. This is why if you open the diff tool, this is why, yeah, if you open the diff tool, you will see that we have a cache time of this value. So each data retained by each query in the active query will be cached, and each place you use the same query, you can reference those by the key, the unique key. The retained cached value will be actually passed as a result. So yeah, by default they will cache the data for you. And yeah, this is, as you can see, let's refresh this. So now it's fetching. After it will be stale, the data will be cached and the data will be stale. So always the data will be, or the cache data will be returned. So, but at the same time, a request will be fired. And this actually makes sense because, yeah, I cached the data, but what if the data actually changes in the backend? By default, I will give you the cache data, but I will go and fetch the new data, or maybe it could be new. And when I fetch it, if it's like different, I will pass it to you again. This is what will happen behind the scene. So a fetch will always happen, but the loading status won't actually be different. It will only change the first time. I hope this was clear. It's a little bit confusing, to be honest, but this is it. This is what will happen. I will show you example on the UI at the end, but to know if this actually being loading or not, or being fetching. So by default, or what you want to check is fetching. So you need to check is fetching or is loading. So if it's loading, or if it's fetching. So let's go here. Refresh. By default, they both false. So now they are both true. With the data we return, now they are both false. So hit again, let me clear and hit it again. As you can see, is fetching is true, but is loading is false. So that's something to remember. The data will be cached. The active query will always retain the cached data each time you call the same query by the key, but it will go actually and fetch that data to make sure the cache is valid or not. And is fetching will actually tell you if the query is fetching or not. So this is the basic implementation for the on-click fetching. This is the first thing that came up to my mind when I started reading about this library, how I can do this, and I think it's fine. But yeah, let me show you some of the features that they have out of the box, because they really have some good features. So let me close my API. I will stop it and hit refresh. Or let me go and enable this by default. So I will just comment the configuration object. So now it will be pending. It will be failed. Now it will be pending again. So reactive query will actually keep trying to fetch the data, even though we are having some failures or some issues, which is something really nice. You can disable this, but I really liked it. I think this is very good thing. And if you want to implement this yourself, this will take you some time. So I really like that they have this out of the box for us. So yeah, and as you can see, even our state, the way we added this is very nice. So we have this loading spinner while trying to fetch the data. So that's something to remember. Now let's just try to display this on the UI, or display maybe something a little bit better on the UI. So I will import from Chakra UI. They have this toast function, and yeah, I think it's the use toast hook. So use toast hook. So const, this will give us a function. So use toast like this. So each time we click this button, I'm gonna use the toast function uh, to display some stuff. So title would be fetching posts data. I think you can now maybe jump to the next video if you want. I'm just gonna do some UI stuff here. Now description will be please wait. Status will be info. Duration would be maybe 3 seconds. On close complete. Maybe you can here sort enable to false. You can do this if you want. I will move it. Maybe you can find a way also like to only maybe the duration should be like while loading, sorry. I think it's fine 3 seconds. I'm just telling the user, hey, I'm starting to load the data. Yeah, I think this will be it. So let's actually go and test it. Sorry, I will return this. Yeah, we have this nice thing. So another thing I wanted to show to you, which is like very easily available out of the box. Maybe you want to keep pulling the server each time. So I think they have this refetch interval. So each second I will actually go and fetch the data again. So this is very nice that they have this. Yeah, implementing this on your own is a little bit annoying. So let's actually like monitor the behavior in our, yeah, let's just monitor the behavior. So each time or when the request ends, it will wait a second and call it again. So as you can remember, each request will take 3 seconds to resolve. And React query is smart enough to not like fire a query each second. It will just wait the previous query. When that resolve, it will fire the next one again. So yeah, the only thing now left to do is to put this post inside the context. So yeah, I hope this was very useful or at least useful. Yeah, this refetch interval, I really like this one. So yeah. So now the only thing we need to do is to destruct the data. And when the data is available, so let's import the use effect. Now, use effect is really one of the nicest things in React. I mean, yeah, a lot of my way of writing or thinking in React changed when I started using use effect. So yeah, my use effect will have the data. Well, it will monitor the data, but each time I will check if we actually have it. If it's not defined, and I would set the posts. Yeah, that's why I need to actually use the context. So use context. So const from add context, import the posts context, which got actually, this one is this here and got exported here. So as you can see. So just put that one here and we have now our posts if you need them and set posts. But if you just ignore, if you want just to ignore the first argument, you can just remove it and add a semicolon, add a colon, sorry, and access the second element. This is actually valid. It looks strange, but it's valid. Now, when we have these data, just set it here. And I think this should be it. I'm looking at the previous code. And let's go to our app.js. Let's do the same thing with context. So just to make sure that this will actually work, let's use the context and display the posts. So from React, import the use context. So const use context and give it the post context. The first element will be the posts. So let's just console log the posts. I'll put it in a curly brackets. This is a shortcut for this. It's easier to debug and notice in the terminal. So I think I called it in a wrong way, in a wrong place. Yep, my bad. This should be inside a functional component, obviously. So by default posts are undefined. Now fetch them. I think I missed something in the app header. Let's actually try to console log the data. We have it. Yeah, it works. Maybe I had to refresh, but this is actually it. This is the data, and this is from the context. Or sorry, this is from the app header, not the app. Maybe I missed something. Mm, not sure what I missed. Oh, I think I need to put this one here. I don't think so, but yeah, I think because this component, the app did not re-render, that's why. I think that's why, yeah, it did not got re-rendered. But we can just continue by creating another component called posts. And inside of it, we will have the posts.js and here the index. So export the default as posts, and let's come here, and I'm gonna just copy paste some code because this is some UI stuff. I'll remove the memo. This was by mistake. So what I'm doing here, I am getting this context or the values from the context, and if the length is like 0, I will return null, which will not render anything here. And by default, I will use the grid, and I will make it responsive like this based on different skins, and I will display this component, which I need to create. So I will put here an index to JS. Yeah, sorry. Why the context here did not work? Because obviously the app is not inside the context. My bad. It got me confused. I'm still thinking about it in the back of my head. But yeah. So here I will create a component called, or a folder called post. And here a post.js and an index.js. So the same stuff applies here. And I will just copy paste the post. Should be easy. Should be like simple stuff. Nothing to worry about. So yeah, I'm just uh, displaying the data in a card. That's it. And let's go into index here and just export star from post. And in the app.js, where is that? We need to import the posts. And this is it. Remember the posts component actually read from the context. So maybe you have some stuff maybe is wrong, but we'll fix it. Um, yeah, we need to actually export everything from here. Come on. Yeah, I think now this will work. So fetch posts, As you can see, we can see the 10 posts we have. So this is the actual data from the backend, from our API. So let me just remove the console logs, and what else? Use contacts is defined but not used here. Okay. Where is that? In app.js. Yeah, this one. So yeah, this is the first example we are creating. I hope this was useful. I really hope that. And the next one, we will create pagination, because remember we have 5,000 posts. We will do some pagination. And maybe at some point we will do the patch, as you can see, the delete and create another time. And I will try to cover as much as I can from the React query. Okay, bye. This was very long.